Alright, what's going on, Titan Clan? It is your boy King Titan X here, back with another video. And this video, I have to say a couple of things. Number one, I've basically gotten like this link to a website that allows me to basically download videos from now on. Download videos and music, so you'll be able to see like my content kind of evolving, at least like editing wise. So it'll be a bit more interactive for you guys, I guess. And on top of that, when it comes onto like my most recent post, I have to explain this one thing. When I say son, I basically don't necessarily mean like my son in like the regular sense, like biological sense or anything. More so, I just mean it as in like, hey, I call you my son because like you were younger and you are good enough to the point where I can consider you enough of a friend. I'll even call like some of my friends in real life that this person I'm always going to call him my tensai. It don't even matter, but really, simply put, I'm just going to call them my sons. Like, don't think too much about it, really. And whenever I say son, don't think about it biologically speaking. Just think of it as, oh, it's one of my friends. But basically, I need to start the video now since it's almost 2 minutes long. So here's the thing. When it comes on to this what if is going to be interesting. Because this is basically my take on what if Deku was Nana Shimura's grandson. Basically, how things are going to go is that Nana Shimura actually had 2 kids in this storyline, in this what if. Shigaraki's dad and Inko. Although Inko is like just a couple years Inko is a couple years younger than Shigaraki's dad. I don't know why I was struggling to say that word, younger. But basically what ended up happening was that, yeah, she actually did end up having Inko just a couple years later than Shigaraki's dad. I don't remember Shigaraki's dad's name right now, but I'll probably end up just putting it on the screen whenever I'm editing this. When it comes on to everything regarding those two, she would have treated them pretty normally at first. She would have treated them like any reasonable, sensible mother would have treated their children at the time. But here is the kicker though. She did end up having to actually give them up for adoption. She had to put them in an orphanage of the sorts. Because, well, she realized that All For One was coming for her. She couldn't afford for All For One to actually get to her kid. She did not want to have her kids actually get hurt. Sorry. She did end up having to give them up for adoption because of the fact that All For One was rising again. She knew her fate as a one for all user. She ended up having to fight All For One, and she realized that she probably did not have a chance against All For One here. Like she did in canon, she did not have a chance against All For One, but she needed to at least fight him, at least hold him back for now, even if it was going to be futile in the end, at least for her life, that is. And she ended up passing on One For All to Toshinori, otherwise known as All Might, better known as All Might actually. So basically what ended up happening was that, yeah, although she was able to pass on One For All to Toshinori, there was something that she did not know about when it came on to One For All, and that is that One For All can actually affect the genetics of the user. What exactly do I mean by this? Simply put, Inko is a bit stronger here. When Inko was born, when Inko was 4 years old and when she first activated her quirk, it was actually much stronger than what you would think. Like, sure, she was able to lift small objects, but she is now strong enough to lift a table. That's basically how strong One For All was for Inko. Basically, I ended up boosting her quirk to that amount of level. So basically, she is able to lift up to, I would say, 50 pounds. That's basically the most that she can lift with a quirk unpracticed. And of course, that's actually pretty decent of a quirk. That's kind of useful for a quirk. I would say that's basically how it went for Inko. She actually did know about her mother. She knew about her mother from her brother. She always wondered why their mother abandoned them. She wondered exactly just why she decided to think that was a good idea. And then she ended up finding out even more, finding out that she was apparently a hero. And this actually made her kind of despise heroes for a little bit, until she realized later on that no, she actually did it for a reason. She sacrificed her life in order to actually give others a chance to actually live, because of the fact that there was apparently like a big bad villain out there. There are villains out there that just show no mercy. There are villains out there that don't care about others' lives. They will kill just for the sake of killing. When their mother sacrificed her life, she sacrificed her life not just for others, not just for some random civilians, but her own children as well. That was the mindset that Inko was looking through. So of course, she actually admired her mother for that. Her brother did not see it that way. Well, for the most part anyways. He actually looked at pictures of himself with Inko and Nana, sometimes thinking that maybe Inko is right. He was thinking that sometimes maybe what Inko was saying was right. Maybe she did mean good by becoming a hero, by just leaving her family to an orphanage. Sure, like he was upset that she decided to leave them to be a hero, but at the same time, it was technically to protect them. She wanted to keep them safe, but he was still pretty stubborn at the end of the day. So the two ended up having a falling out over the years because of this. Sure, they were adopted eventually by a happy couple that couldn't have children themselves, but at the same time, they were also still kind of having these back-to-back conversations, these heated arguments every single week, talking about, hey, and here's the thing about mom, and here's the thing about our mother, and this, that, and so forth. Of course, these two just, with this falling out, basically, I don't know how to say it. Basically, these two went their separate ways throughout the years. By the time they were 18 years old, they ended up moving out. And these two didn't really speak to each other after that. They were no longer on speaking terms afterwards. Inko went on to basically marry Hasashi Midoriya, while her brother, he went on to actually marry himself. He went on to marry a decent woman. He went on to actually form a pretty good business. He ended up making a pretty good life for himself, but he was an abusive father at the same time, because of the fact that his kids wanted to be heroes, and every time that his son would mention wanting to be a hero, This just made him ache. This made him kind of scratch his skin a bit because he disliked heroes. He hated them with a passion because it reminded him so much of what happened to his mother. The fact that she just abandoned them like that. He had abandonment issues. That's basically what ended up happening to him. And we all know what ended up happening to him after you read the manga, that is. But when it came on to Inko, she was made none the wiser until she ended up getting a phone call from the police mentioning how her brother actually died. She was in shock. Honestly, she didn't know how to really respond to this. And then she would actually end up looking to her son Izuku. Izuku still has the same last name as in canon, but the thing about it here is that Izuku looks a bit different here. Simply put, he has pure black hair, just like Nana Shimura. But not only that, but he no longer has freckles in this timeline either. He also has a quirk here. When everything was first established, Inko was pretty shocked to hear that her brother was dead. She was surprised to hear that her brother died. I'm pretty sure everybody would be shocked to hear that their sibling, or at least like family member in general, died. Somebody that they knew died. And they wouldn't know how to respond at first. But she realized that she had to be strong for Izuku. She ended up going to his funeral and she kind of broke down, realizing that this was an empty casket. They didn't even... Something happened to her brother. Something happened to his whole family, actually. To the point where it was literally that they were just wiped out from existence, kind of. Like something happened, some sort of villain must have attacked them and basically had it to where like literally there was no trace of them left. She was kind of angry, she was hurt because of this. Izuku didn't know what was going on, but her hurt self, like her anger, she wanted vengeance. She desired vengeance, and she would actually train Izuku here. She actually trained Izuku in how to fight. She trained him in using his quirk, which I should mention now. Izuku's quirk was basically a mix of Inko's quirk and Nana's quirk. I actually put this on the community tab before. I basically brought up the question of what should Izuku's quirk be here, because I wasn't really too sure about what to give him. Basically, when it came on to Izuku's quirk, it was basically a sort of telekinesis. Not the strongest, but basically not the strongest form of telekinesis. Not something like Tatsumaki's scale from like One Punch Man or anything, but pretty strong, honestly. He was able to basically float. He was basically able to fly, honestly. He was able to lift up small objects, or at least like lift up to like 50 pounds or something. He was able to actually lift up things. He could lift up anything really, just as long as he trained his quirk. He could train his quirk to where he could lift up a whole bunch of things at the same time. Although he had to train his pure strength as well. He had to train his physical strength and his telekinetic strength in order to actually lift up stronger objects, objects that weighed more. If he wanted to lift something that was like 60, 70, 80 pounds or something, he would actually have to train his quirk more. He would actually have to train his quirk in order to do such a thing. It would take months at a time in order to actually build up that sort of telekinetic strength. Inko wanted to train Izuku so that he would be able to bring vengeance, find the person that killed her brother. Find the person that killed his uncle. Find the person that killed his cousins. Find the person that killed his aunt. Find these villains. She wanted these villains off the streets now. She wanted to bring a legacy to the Shimura name. She wanted to bring a sort of legacy. She wanted to bring vengeance. She just had this sort of anger in her eyes. But she would kind of soften her eyes towards Izuku and Hisashi. Sure, she wasn't like the worst person on earth or anything, but she wasn't nearly as bad as Endeavor. I'm not going to say that, but she did end up bringing her ideals onto Izuku. She ended up bringing her vengeful spirit onto Izuku. She basically placed some of her burdens onto Izuku. Izuku would carry these burdens throughout his life. He would carry them. He would train his quake. He would train to be the very best. Not like anyone ever was, but to where he would be able to actually compete against multiple villains at a time. He wanted that sort of power. He wanted to become strong and powerful, just like All Might, but better than All Might, honestly. Like, when it came on to just how his quirk worked, he was able to lift like multiple objects at a time, like a collective amount of like 50 pounds. He could lift up that much at a time. And that was his limit at the time. And the heavier the objects were, and that it took longer to actually lift them. It took longer to actually float alongside them. He was lifting himself and other objects as well. So it just made it kind of difficult. It was easy for him to fly by himself, but when it came on to like just lifting objects as well, it became a bit more complicated. He had to actually learn throughout the years in order to do such a thing. It took years and years of practice. Sure, he may have been strong, but he had to train to become strong, even with One For All's influence on his body. One For All's influence on his quirk that allowed him to be even stronger than what he would possibly be without it. He could fly, he could lift multiple objects at a time, but he could also use these objects as projectiles, not like Inko where it was basically just a sort of dragging object, like some sort of grapple. It was basically that he was able to use any sort of object that he wanted as a projectile, as a sort of weapon for him. And that's what Izuku ended up learning throughout the years. He ended up fighting a couple bullies that thought his quirk wasn't all that at first, until they realized that no, he has a full-on telekinetic quirk when he was 4 years old. He didn't know how to describe it properly. That was his only issue. He knew how the quirk worked, he just didn't know how to explain it to others, which led on to people thinking that he was weak, that he had a pretty weak quirk. He would basically, when people asked about his quirk when he was in like preschool or something, he would have said, "Oh, it's nothing much. I can just lift objects and fly a little bit, not too great." And people just went with that for a good while. Bakugo got his quirk as well. He was actually the first person to get a quirk out of the whole class. Izuku was near towards the end because of just reasons. I don't know why I said reasons, but it's simply because of the fact that it just did. You could say that he was a bit of a late bloomer, honestly. He ended up getting his quirk at 5 years old, honestly. Some people thought he was going to be quirkless, but no. Turns out that Izuku isn't necessarily quirkless. But people thought he had a weak quirk for a while. People thought he was a late bloomer. People knew that he was a late bloomer, but it went on. People tried to bully him, but they didn't realize that Izuku was actually training his quirk. they didn't realize that Izuku could actually become stronger. They didn't realize that through pure effort alone, or through dedication, Izuku was able to build up his quirk. The quirk was strong. The quirk was strong, sure, but it could be stronger. That's what Izuku desired. He wanted to make his mother happy. With all this desire put into Izuku, he had a burning passion to train throughout the years. He trained harder than almost everybody. He would have his occasional spars with Bakugo, but most of the time Izuku would actually win these spars. When it came on to just other fights in general, Izuku would win those fights. Izuku was no pushover. That was something that people would have a misconception about. People did not realize that Izuku would actually become strong. These people thought Izuku was going to be weak. And they looked at his mother, and she was a fairly slim woman. They didn't expect for her to be strong either. She had a more calming spirit as well. Although they didn't realize the beast that was hidden behind that veil, behind that mask, that pretty sweet smile that Inko had most of the time. And it turns out that while she was a bit angry, she had this burning passion as well. And she was like Mitsuki, except that she knew how to hide her abrasive side. Mitsuki acknowledged that, hey, I know that you have an abrasive side. I know that that when things get down, you can actually get down. I am kind of afraid of you because you can snap at any minute now. You can hide this. You are a bit of a manipulator. You can hide your abrasive side, unlike me. I'm kind of scared of you, and I like that. That's how those two actually became friends over the years. When it came onto Izuku was the same way. Like, he was like the nice child until you pushed his buttons. Until you pushed his buttons too much. And then he would show you that no, you do not mess with me. That's what other people would learn throughout the years. People that try to bully him for his calmer nature. People that try to bully Izuku, they did not know what they were in store for over the years. And Izuku ended up getting a bit of a reputation being like a terrible tornado or something. People knew Izuku as strong. Izuku ended up making a name for himself throughout his time in school. Some of the kids that ended up going with him to other schools actually ended up spreading rumors. Some people wanted to fight Izuku, thinking that, hey, this does not sound like this kid. They're probably making up lies. These are all rumors. Only to realize later on that these rumors were just underestimating him. Because Izuku was much stronger. At this point, I would say that Izuku is 14. Izuku is able to lift near, I would say about like 4 or 5 times the amount that he was able to lift originally. But he usually keeps it to around to smaller objects, because yeah, although he can lift like 250 pounds, it's going to be more difficult to lift like a giant 250 pound weight or something. It's going to be more difficult to lift a 250 pound man than to lift a whole bunch of small objects that are a collective 250 pounds. Plus, he can use those 250 pounds worth of small objects as projectiles and as a sort of shield as well. So we found it easier to just use those small objects. He found it more useful. And you better believe that Izuku was going to make it into UA. Izuku had this goal to make it into UA. He wanted to make it into UA so that he would be able to be one step closer to his goal of becoming the very best hero, getting rid of all of these villains that were on the streets. Inko even told him about what happened to the rest of his family members throughout the years. What happened to his uncle, his aunt, his cousins, these people that he didn't even know about until way later on throughout his life. The reason why he never even got to meet them was because of some bad blood between these two, and between his mom and his uncle, and the fact that some sort of villain killed them. So Izuku's desire to become the very best increased even higher. It increased higher. He wanted to become the very best so that he could get rid of all of these villains that were on the streets, because of the fact that these villains ended up messing with his family. He had hurt in his eyes when he realized that this happened. This hurt him so much. This really hit home for him, honestly. And he realized that it could happen to his mom, his mom and dad, anytime. That's why he put into his training and so seriously. And that's where I'm going to leave it off. But for right now, at the very least, what ends up happening next is that Izuku would actually walk home after the teacher had mentioned something about Izuku and Bakugo wanting to go to UA, that they were actually applying for UA. The kids here, they wouldn't laugh at Izuku. They would actually be like, yeah, I can see these two making it into UA. These two got like the strongest quirks out of all of the class. Izuku has a super precise quirk, and Bakugo has an explosion quirk that is incredibly deadly if he uses it in any certain way. Like, he is just like, when it comes on to like who would win in a fight, like, these kids would actually tie these two. Like, half the class would say that Izuku would win, the other side would say that Bakugo would win. That's how good Izuku and Bakugo are. These two were eternal rivals at this point. Bakugo even acknowledged this. They weren't necessarily friends, they were rivals at the end of the day. And when it came on to the sludge villain incident, that's where I'm going to be leaving it off. And the sludge villain tries to actually capture Izuku, but I'm going to leave you guys off on a cliffhanger. And the sludge villain actually captures Izuku and tries to take over his body, but something happens. That's where I'm going to leave it off. King Titan X out. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Like, when it comes onto like the channel, when it comes onto like that gameplay you see in the background, that isn't my gameplay. That's actually from another channel that I download the content off of, because like, it's free. Because of the fact that they said it was free, anybody could really use it as long as they put like the link to their channel in the description below. So if you want to go check out that channel, I don't remember the name of the channel right now, but you can go check out the link in the description, and I'll also leave the link to like my Discord server in the description below as well. King Titan X out.